Okay. As I am checking for any dress code issues, seeing any. There we go. Student-led conference. I'm going to leave that on the agenda. Due Friday, like Ms. Viste said, it will be worth points. So you got to get that in. Make sure you are doing it with parents, just like you would have if you would have come into class. And we did send out a sign up genius. So if your parents do want to meet with us for any reason, they can set up a meeting. Okay. If you have a D or F, you have to have a meeting. If you have an A, but your parents want to meet with us anyways, they can set that up if they choose to. We already did seating chart, and your test is happening in a couple of days. So let's get to those notes. What were the two diseases? I'll take hand volunteers. Yes. Okay, sorry. Huh? Leukemia was one of them, Alan? And Stargardt's, very good. And we looked at how we can use stem cells to treat those. And the pluripotent stem cell, remember, those are the medium strength stem cells. And those come from where? The inner cell mass of a, yes, is actually an embryo that has evolved into something called, starts with a B. Blastocyst. The blastocyst, very good. Very similar to an embryo, it's just a bigger, more cells embryo. Yes. Yes. All right, so we're going to start today with this video, and then we'll continue in our notes.
Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. Over the course of human history, medicine has come quite a long way. Centuries ago, we thought the body was composed of different liquids called humors, and if you were unlucky enough to get sick during this time, your blood would have been withdrawn in a process known as bloodletting. Gross. In modern times, over the course of human history, medicine has come quite a long way. Centuries ago, we thought the body was composed of different liquids called humors, and if you were unlucky enough to get sick during this time, your blood would have been withdrawn in a process known as bloodletting. Gross. In modern times, we can give antibiotics, perform open heart surgery, and even operate on the brain. However, one of the newest advances in medicine is stem cell research. You may have heard of stem cells before, but there's a lot of mystery about what they actually do. Why is this such a promising new field? Well, to answer this, let's shrink down to the size of a cell. Normal cells in the body are specialized. We have neurons in the brain, red blood cells in our blood, and cells that make up your muscles and bones. All of these cells carry the same DNA, which is unique to you, unless you're an identical twin. But what makes the cells different is that some of them have certain genes turned either on or off. The genes are encoded in the DNA, which is all the same, but the gene expression is different. This means that the genes expressed in a red blood cell are different than the genes expressed in a lung cell. And that lung cell will always stay a lung cell. It will not change into a red blood cell one day, however, stem cells can. Stem cells are unspecialized cells that give rise to specialized cells in a process called differentiation. When a stem cell divides, the new cells can either remain as stem cells or become other cells with a specialized function, like muscle cells. There's a lot of cell talk, but we're going to keep going. There are two main types of stem cells, those found in adults and those found in embryos. Somatic or adult stem cells can be used to repair and maintain the tissues in which they are found. These can be found in the brain, skin, and bone marrow. In fact, during a bone marrow transplant, stem cells are injected into a patient whose bone marrow was damaged somehow. The unspecialized stem cells then create new bone marrow, allowing for the body to produce healthy blood cells again. Stem cells can also be used for organ and tissue regeneration. If the cells differentiate in just the right way, they can act as a renewable source of replacement cells. For example, stem cells beneath the skin can be used to make skin grafts for burn victims. And this could eliminate our reliance on organ donation and make the wait list for transplants a lot shorter. Stem cells also have the potential to replace damaged brain tissue, treating diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Furthermore, embryonic stem cells can differentiate and form insulin-producing cells that can treat people with type 1 diabetes. And the list of treatments goes on and on and on. The main controversy with stem cells, however, involves those taken from embryos. It's important to note that these cells are not obtained from fertilized eggs in a woman's body. Instead, they are gathered from eggs in an in vitro fertilization clinic. These are the eggs that were not implanted in a mother's uterus and were willingly donated for research purposes. fetuses. But this does beg the question of whether or not a life was destroyed in the process, which ultimately leads to the debate. The use of stem cells are seemingly endless, and we've come a long way since our humble beginnings, and will hopefully continue to advance. So tell me, have you had any experience with stem cells or organ donation? Or maybe you know someone who has? I'd love to hear your or
Anybody have a friend or family member being treated with stem cell regenerative medicine? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Harsh. This was just a bunch of extra links if you guys are interested in the topic. There's definitely some cool stuff here. San Diego's Frozen Zoo. I actually have been there, which is really cool. And I think we guys brought up the rhino and how they have the genetics to possibly bring those back someday. There's just a lot of other pretty cool. I wish we had time to like sit here and read all of these. Okay, so it kind of touched on the ethics of this when he was talking about where are we getting these stem cells, and that they are coming from donated eggs that are not fertilized. Okay, so it's kind of like I've heard some people say, oh, you eat chicken eggs, you're killing a life. Well, those chicken eggs that you're eating weren't fertilized, and they would have never become a chicken at the point that it was laid, right? So it's kind of a similar topic. These eggs are being donated by women, unfertilized, but still some people have different opinions on whether that is destroying the possibility of a life or not, and whether that is okay or not. So that's where we have this kind of ethical debate. But we have different places that we can get stem cells. So that's what we're going to go into now. We did talk about Prop 14. Remember, that was the one that barely passed 51% and is going to cost us billions of dollars in taxes to continue our stem cell research in California. Here is a map. This map is showing you permissive versus restrictive, prohibitive areas. So you can see California, we are on the more permissive side, specifically permits somatic cell nuclear transfer. We'll go into what that is under certain conditions. So these parts of the world, the green parts, okay? The red parts defined as one of which prohibits the somatic cell nuclear transfer, but permits the use of HESC research using in vitro fertilization embryos. So that's what he was talking about in the video. So embryos, they're taking these embryos from women that are donating them, or only permits that research on a limited number of lines. And I can't really tell the difference between the reds, but the reds is just restrictive or prohibitive. So it's either restrictive or there's no stem cell research allowed. So gray is either no data. I'm guessing no data. Or maybe they don't have the resources or the money or the option. It could have been that they just like declined to comment, it's possible, type of thing. Okay, so here is the sources. You have on page 10 and 11, you have these different sources of stem cells. Where we get them kind of leads to where we are on this ethical debate. So there's not a whole lot of ethical debate taking adult stem cells. I am 18 or over and I say take my stem cells, I consult, it is fine. Also, it doesn't kill the human, it doesn't harm the human in any long-term sort of way. But when we get into the fetal and the embryonic and the infant, that's where some of this ethical debate comes in. Okay, so embryonic stem cells, that's the first kind of box that you have there. It's asking for sources, drawback, benefit, argument against, and argument for. So embryonic stem cells are cells removed from the inner cell mass of a blastocystis at a developmental stage before the time that implantation would normally occur in the uterus. if the ICM cells are cultured under appropriate conditions, they can continue to proliferate and replicate themselves indefinitely and still maintain the developmental potential to form any cell type of the body. So these are our pluripotent stem cells. Okay, these are the ones that would probably be most helpful for us. So this is you can put for your source number 1, inner cell mass. Inner cell mass of blastocyst, actually, I would say. Here, I'll highlight that for you. Yes. On later slides? Oh, okay, good. Is inner cell mass of blastocyst one of them? Here? Ah, okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so this is just showing you kind of how this happens. So you do have to have fertilization, in vitro fertilization for this one. So these are the little sperm getting into the egg. We have fertilization. Because an egg is not going to start dividing until it's been fertilized. Okay, if it doesn't get fertilized, it's just going to go through the system and be flushed out. Then you have your totipotent cells, which we still aren't at the level of getting those out, but it'll then become a blastocyst around day 6 after fertilization. And you start to get this blue section, this inner cell mass inside of that egg. And those are the cells that they can extract and basically grow them in a lab. So they're not growing a baby in the lab. They take out just the cells and the cells just keep dividing. Okay, at the point we take these cells out, they can't really become a human anymore. Okay, but they can become, they are stem cells that can become different kinds of cells that we can use for medicine. Yes.
So what's the argument for
So people think, some people think that that could have become a life, right? At this point, this could have become a human being. But at the point that we destroy that egg to get these cells out, it is no longer. Right, but there's ethical debates on that too. And the laws on that are changing all the time as well. All right, here's your sources. So cell lines that already exist and have been growing and dividing in research labs for decades. I'm going to highlight what you need here. Yeah, in the 1, 2, 3, in the sources. Yeah. In research labs for decades, they could shorten it like that. So basically, these were cells that were taken a long time ago, and they're just continuing to grow. So at this point, I'm not destroying any new eggs. I'm just taking what was growing for decades. Spare embryos. We can just put spare embryos. And custom-made embryos. That one, I think you just need the whole thing. I think you asked me that last time, or somebody did, and I actually haven't been able to find the exact answer. I would say it's probably not that long.
I don't think we need that.
Right. But my guess is that the environment that you have to have these cells in is very particular. So that might be part of the struggle. But I think where we're at with these stem cells isn't really the technology anymore. We're good with the technology. We figured it all out. It's the ethical limitations and what we can do after this. Like, okay, we have our stem cells, but causing them to become specifically what we want, working with the genetics of it is probably where the difficulty now lies. Like if I just have this stem cell and give it to you, it's not necessarily going to help you. I need to get it to turn into a bone marrow cell or the eye cell for starters. Like getting it to turn into what we want is probably the more difficult part at this point. Okay. Here is a drawback. The main drawback is that it can be the destruction of human embryos. And that is only in source number 2, right? Source number 1, well, we already destroyed the embryo and we're just taking cells from that, so we can't go back in time. And step 3 is another kind of process that we're not actually destroying embryos. But the concern people have about this is that we're destroying those embryos. So the question of when human life begins is highly controversial. Some people believe that an embryo is a person with the same moral status as an adult or a live-born child. As a matter of religious faith and moral conviction, they believe that human life begins at conception, at fertilization, and that an embryo is therefore a person. According to this view, an embryo has interests and rights that must be respected. From this perspective, taking a blastocyst and removing the inner cell mass is tantamount to murder. Okay. The benefits here. They can differentiate to any type of the cell. Basically, you're looking at the bold here. They can support basic research, provide material for testing, unlimited amount of tissue, just right as much of those as you can fit in that box. Basically, helpful for our research in general. I think we talked in the previous slide that these can help us understand how differentiation works, which can help us prevent. Now we talked about preventative medicine. So if we can understand how these things are going wrong, we can figure out how to fix it. But also, after preventative, we can figure out how to fix things that have already gone wrong. All right, so remember, our embryonic stem cells are the most powerful because they can turn into the most different types of cells, but they are also the most ethically debated, sorry. That would be, so you definitely want to think about your opinion, your stance on this. Like I said, if it was Prop 14 and you were 18, would you have voted for it or not? And you need to think about 2 things. Ethically, are you okay with this? And economically, are you okay with this? Right? Does the benefits outweigh the cost of you paying taxes for this? Yes.
I'm sure it's part of the fix like the condition, right? It's not like building stuff.
Correct.
I don't know.
Could it be used to build a new human? Possibly. But that is definitely not where scientists are trying to go. And even if they did, there's definitely laws on that. There's laws on cloning humans. We've cloned animals, right? Like we've cloned sheep and other animals. There apparently is a scientist, I think, from Italy that is claiming that he cloned a human, but we've never seen any evidence of that. So he might just be trying to get some press. But there is definitely laws on what we can do. And even with genetics as well, like the idea of designer babies, do we have the information to go in and change the genetics of an embryo? We're pretty much there. Is that legal? No. For cloning? I think it's just we can't clone humans.
Like,
Yeah.
you can change the structure of like the egg, the form, what type of pig you want.
Well, I think where we're at right now, and there's actually there's a really great documentary I usually show in biotech, actually, if we get time for it. Right now, we're at the point where we can look at, for example, if a female has a bunch of eggs fertilized. For in vitro fertilization, females who often have trouble getting pregnant, they go through this in vitro fertilization. So their eggs are fertilized in a lab, and then they start to grow in a lab. and then they're implanted in the body and grow into a human. At the point that they will have a bunch of eggs fertilized, they can actually run genetic testing on those different embryos, and they can see if the embryos carry certain traits for genetic diseases or not. So there's a woman who was having trouble getting pregnant because she had a genetic disorder in her DNA that was causing miscarriages. And so then she went through this in vitro fertilization, and they were able to pick out one of the embryos that did not have that trait. And then that baby was implanted, and that baby was born and born healthy. But that's kind of where the limitation lies, is us picking the good eggs, if you will. But the possibility of us going in and actually changing the genetics, say, I want a blue-eyed baby, so I'm going to make that a blue-eyed baby. The technology for that may not be too far away. The ethics of that, we'll see. We'll see. Okay. The argument against and the argument for. The argument against, let's see, there's danger of embryonic stem cells developing into tumor cells. So that could be bad. Every human embryo is potential human with the right of development. So that's kind of our drawback, same thing. Embryo is a potential human. And that's where people have different opinions on, like, where is the start of life, right? Same idea with the abortion issue. Or can be used to replace organs or tissues. So currently, we can take organs from humans who are deceased and have decided to donate their organs. Or we've also been growing organs in pigs. We can take organs and organ parts from pigs. But this would probably be even better, right? Pain and suffering can be reduced. Lives can be saved. Cells can be removed from embryos that have stopped developing and would have died anyways. The cells. I think I have a video later. They take a super tiny little needle and just like suction it out from the egg. The egg is actually a pretty big cell. So cells are removed at the stage with no pain. No pain can be felt by the embryo. So if you're worried about it being life or not is one thing, but if you do agree that it's life, but ethically it's okay to end that possibility of life, you might also want to think about the fact that it's not hurting that life if you do consider it a life. And the embryos from IVF that would have otherwise been destroyed. So the case of that one is like, we're already destroying some embryos anyways. So we might as well take the stem cells from those that have already been approved to be destroyed. Yeah, so in terms of getting the eggs, that's a good question. I know women, you could get paid for donating your eggs. I'm guessing they somehow just go into your ovaries and take some eggs, because women were born with all the eggs we're ever going to have. So they're all stored in there. And then every month, one of them drops. But there's tons in there. So I guess they just go in and extract them. I don't really know the details. Yeah. The egg cells are one of the biggest cells in our body. That's what they do. They take out the eggs. So in the case, so my sister has been a surrogate twice. The couple both couples that she surrogated for were gay couples. So they didn't have an egg, right, to donate. So what they did was they donated their sperm, and then there was a anonymous egg donor. So these women that get paid to donate their eggs, they basically bought some eggs, and they don't know who the mom is, right? It's an anonymous egg donor. So they just bought some eggs basically and then fertilized them and then implanted those fertilized eggs into my sister's body, and then she gave birth to babies. I know it's interesting because the first time it was twins, the eggs were from the same female, but each of the babies had a different dad's sperm. She hasn't given me an exact number, but I know it's in the probably tens of thousands. That's a lot. Growing 2 humans for 9 months. I would expect a big paycheck for that. I gotta do it for free, unfortunately. Okay. Here is your next source, the umbilical cord, stem cells. So this is actually something that you could pay a lot to have done. If I was more rich, I would do it. You could actually save your baby's stem cells in like a stem cell bank, I think they call it. It's quite pricey, but basically what they do is they take blood from the umbilical cord and they store it for you. So if your baby ever grows up and gets a certain disease, they can go back to those stem cells, and those stem cells can be helpful in treating that baby. That actually, I have a family member who was like, I'm gonna do it. Oh no, the story was that he did it for his kids who are now like grown. And I think a few years ago, they contacted him and said, you know, your children are this old now, the chances of them developing a disease is pretty low. Can we have some of your stem cells? And he said no. He's like, no, you're not taking any of my baby stem cells.
Are you gonna eat the placenta?
I don't know if they offered him money or not. And I don't know if they told him like what percentage, because they weren't going to take all of them. I was like, why didn't you? And he's like, I paid for that and I don't want to give any of them up. If it were me, I would be like, it depends. Tell me the percent. Yeah. People keep asking me that. I think I've looked into it. The vitamins and minerals you can get from that, you can also get from like eating healthy food and taking a prenatal. And also, yeah, but that's because they need those nutrients. We have better ways to get the nutrients. Also, the only way I thought about it was like, if you put it in a capsule for me, maybe I'll take the capsule. I'm not going to eat it like a steak, but that's $500 to get it encapsulated, and I don't think I need to spend $500 on nutrients. If you pay them, it's about $500. They will take it, they will dry it, and they will put it in like pills, like a vitamin, and you can take it then. I guess you could ask for it. I don't know. I just know I wouldn't want it unless it was in a pill form.
I didn't even know you had to like give it for the
Yeah. It's weird. I try to think about that part because I feel like it's gonna be so weird. I just want to focus on the baby.
It's like the baby, then they're like, okay,
They're like, wait, you're not done. Okay. So umbilical blood is rich source of multipotent hematopoietic stem cells. So remember, multipotent is our least potent, okay, but still pretty helpful. These can become into either red blood cells, white blood cells, or platelets. The source is just the umbilical cord. So you don't have to fill out sources on that one. Our drawbacks. Let's get some red in here. Umbilical cord stem cells will not continue to grow and divide in culture, so the cells must be frozen. So when you pay for it, I actually forget how much it was because I looked at it and I was like, I can afford that. But they freeze it. So really what you're paying for when you're paying for the service of them saving your stem cells or the baby stem cells is having a space in a freezer somewhere, and I guess the energy to keep that freezer frozen. I think it'd be cool if they could just be like, here, put this in your freezer. And then you just have it in your own freezer. That'd be cool. Are multipotent and can only differentiate to a limited number of cell types. Those are your drawbacks. So again, not as good as the embryonic stem cells. Benefits are relatively easy to obtain, non-invasive, okay? That umbilical cord gets discarded of anyways, so you might as well take what's in there. The cells will be 100% compatible with the donor baby, right? It's your cells. So if you end up needing that in the future, it came from your body. So that's one of the problems we have with donations, right? Is that you have this possibility of rejection, which can kill you. And even if you don't have rejection, you still have to be on medication for your whole life to prevent the rejection. Not any special ethical concerns. Nobody really has a problem with taking blood from an umbilical cord that's going in the trash anyways. Yeah, hazardous waste goes somewhere. I don't know.
Did they recycle it?
It's a great question.
They should just use it as a leash.
A leash.
Would it be like illegal if they like kept the umbilical cord?
Like without asking me? Probably. Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like
I feel like if they really need them, they should.
they might as well. I don't know. If they asked me, I'd be like, sure. I just wish you could give me some for myself for free. But I think the umbilical cord,
Frame it up in your house.
put it in a jar. I don't
Well,
know.
like,
Somebody
when you're
said
Don't put it in a
Somebody
jar.
said that their parent still has part of their umbilical cord, but that's because when you go home, like your belly button, you still have some of it on there, right? So I think you get to keep that much. I think there's probably rules against sending you home with hazardous waste.
Probably.
My cousin just had a baby and he said that he kept wanting to pull it off because it just looked like it would fall off and he kept wanting to pull it off and his wife had to say, don't do that. Because if you pull it off, you can like mess up the cute little belly button. But yeah, it is supposed to just fall off. You're not supposed to pull it off. Yeah.
What's an Indian?
I don't think outies are a thing anymore. I think whatever was causing outies, like the doctors have figured out how to not.
Oh, really? So what's
I think, yeah, I think it's how they cut. And it could be, I could definitely see if you pull off the umbilical cord before it's ready to come off, I could see that causing an out. I feel like I heard somewhere that like outies aren't a thing anymore.
Oh, they're finally going.
We all like different.
Yeah. Yeah, and then when you get pregnant, your belly button is like totally different. It's like not even indented anymore. It's just like flat. It's weird. Okay, then we have adult stem cells. So we're on page 11. In terms of potency, they are the least helpful. So scientists are discovering that many tissues and organs contain a small number of adult stem cells. Like we said in the beginning of the notes, most of the differentiation happens very early in life. Okay, so by the time you get to be an adult, you don't have very many left. And they're also multipotent, so they don't have as much potency in terms of being helpful. So drawbacks. They are multipotent and can only differentiate into a limited number of cell types. Just like our umbilical cord. Some types are rare and hard to obtain. Probably going to be a little bit painful, unlike the umbilical cord. If you want to donate your bone marrow, that is very generous because it is not pain-free.
What happens if you lose like your bone marrow?
Then you die.
I mean, there's like something out in your body that like control your bones.
No, your bones are solid on the outside, so structurally you'll still be able to walk, but you won't be creating red blood cells, which is what causes oxygen to come. So basically, you would basically suffocate. You could breathe in air all you want, but the oxygen won't get to your cells. Well, yeah. Same benefit, 100% compatible with the donor. Yeah, they have to drill into your bone. So I don't know, did you guys, I think I brought this up before, that show, the 100? that I binged over the summer?
No, I know that.
They were stealing bone marrow, right? Yeah. And it was like super, they were like drilling into her femur and like sucking out bone marrow. Because there were people who had like radiation issues, and they realized that if they could give them stem cells from the bone marrow of the healthy people, it would cure their disease. Then they could go out into the world without dying from radiation. It's a great show. I thought it was great. I don't know. I don't have very high standards on shows either. My husband's like, you like everything. I'm like, I'm just accepting. I thought it was cool though. Do not raise special ethical concerns. Okay. I guess it was a book too, or books, a series of books. What? Oh yeah, people eat bone marrow all the time. I remember the first time I went to a super fancy restaurant, my husband took me to the airport. You know, there's a restaurant at LAX that's like up high. There's this restaurant and you sit up high and you can see like everything around. And I got the steak and it came with the bone and then the bone marrow in the steak, and you're supposed to eat the bone marrow, scoop it out of the bone. Anybody ever done that?
Don't they put bone marrow in?
I didn't eat it. At that point, I was like, get this off my plate. He's like, I paid like $80 for that. I'm like, you have it. And it had like applesauce like on top of it. It was very good. Oh yeah, he ate it. He said it was good. It's a delicacy. People eat this on purpose. It's, I mean, I ate the steak, don't get me wrong, but I was like, get this bone off my plate.
They use bone marrow and fruit gummies.
They use tendons, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
I heard that they use bone marrow.
No. And marshmallows, that comes from like horse hooves in marshmallows. That's why marshmallows aren't kosher, because they are ground up like the protein in it is ground up like horse hooves. Yep. I know. And you know, when I found that out, I was around the campfire and I had just made my s'more, and my friend was like, you know what that's made out of? Right before I bit into my s'more, it totally ruined it. Then I got over it and I still eat them. Okay. Somatic cells can be reprogrammed to form pluripotent stem cells. So remember that article I sent you that some of you guys read about the printing, the 3D printing? They said first they took stem cells and they had to reprogram them. Do we get everything we need from here? Yes. Okay, from here. So you have induced pluripotent stem cells right under your adult stem cells. Okay. So what are they? So induced pluripotent. Remember, pluripotent is our medium. Okay, so if we can go from multipotent to pluripotent, that is an advantage. So these can be reprogrammed to form pluripotent stem cells called induced pluripotent stem cells. First achieved using mouse cells by Shinya Yamanaka of Japan in 2006. Technique has successfully been used to reprogram human somatic cells to a state very similar to embryonic cells. They're not going back to totipotent, or at least going back to multipotent. They come from skin or blood cells that have been genetically reprogrammed, which enables the development of an unlimited source of any type of human cell needed for therapeutic purposes. They can be prodded into becoming beta islet cells to treat diabetes, blood cells to create new blood free of cancer, for leukemia, or neurons to treat neurological disorders. So thank you, Mr. Yamanaka, for your wonderful invention. What do you need here? What are ISPC? I'll do that in red. Stem cells that are reprogrammed to form pluripotent stem cells. That would be your what is it? How are they created? I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Derived from blood cells, genetically reprogrammed back to embryonic-like pluripotent states. I'll do that in blue. That would be your how it's created. What are the benefits? Development of unlimited source of any type of human cell needed for therapeutic purposes. What color should I do that one? Green is sometimes hard to read.
Purple. Pink, purple. Let's go.
That looks too close to blue. Pink's not too bright to read? Okay. Let's go pink. All right, so there you have your what is it? How is it created in blue? And what are the benefits in pink? And of course, it's always important to think that he's getting the credit, but he probably had a lot of graduate students helping him out. That's the one thing about being a graduate student is you do all this work because you're trying to get your degree. But then Mr. Yamanaka gets all.
This is Japan. They're on them.
Did you say One Piece? Really traumatized by that show.
See?
There's too many episodes.
What? I'm
I'm on episode 900.
gonna grow old by the time I.
That okay, so while I was binging the 100, my husband was binging One Piece.
Oh, I'll ask him
And
about
he
it.
would stay up all night. He's like, I have to watch all the episodes. I'm like, you're never gonna finish. He's all caught up, and now they're still doing new episodes. And every time he's like, a new episode comes out tonight, he gets all excited. You're such a dork. What?
Do you like Wano?
Who? What's 1-0? The arc? Oh, the ship?
No. It's the name of like. Okay, so it's kind of like seasons.
Oh,
Right.
Run.
Oh,
It's like arts. What
I don't
episode is
know.
he on?
He's all caught up. He's seen everything except. Is there movies? If there's movies, he hasn't seen them.
There's a lot of.
I don't think he's seen the movies. Maybe he has. I don't know. He goes upstairs and I just hear.
I'll ask him. I'll be like,
He likes it, but the guy who's like the womanizer really bothers him. He's like, that's not a good person. Yeah. But he thought it was funny when he switched places with the girl for a certain amount of time. He tries to tell me about it, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You gotta know.
And then he was watching Space Dandy. I think he finished Space Dandy.
look away.
Again, he tried, I think he watched that like a long time ago. Okay, anyways, here we go. This is how it happens. I think this is a good place to end. Do I need to do homework? I think we can probably finish this tomorrow, if not almost finish this by tomorrow. Then you'll have some time to get ready for your test. Your Unit 5 syllabus statements. Thank you, Alan, for trying to get into that, because then I got an email telling me that I forgot to give you guys access. So if you tried to access it and it didn't work, it should work now. No, I emailed you back like 2 minutes later, and I was like, I fixed it. So yeah, just work on your syllabus statements. Remember, don't save all your studying till the end. I would go home tonight and study through the packet. Okay, make sure you're getting this information. Take a minutes because I didn't. All righty. Oh, I guess you guys all got my remind because you were here. Tomorrow we should be switching. Okay, I'll have a sign on the door, but we're switching to room 20, most likely tomorrow, because another class needs to use our microscopes, and it's too scary to take all those fancy microscopes across class, across the school. 20 is over the end of the row behind us, Branka's room.